Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to our last review video here for the High Republic Phase 2. We're talking about the junior novels today. We're talking about Quest for the Hidden City and The Quest for Planet X. These two junior novels were written by George Mann and Tessa Gratton, and we're going to give you our thoughts on them right now. Before we do so, make sure you hit that like button and you're subscribing to the channel. We have a lot more High Republic stuff coming. We do have a timeline video coming soon, and we just dropped our tier list and comic reviews as well, on top of our Path of Vengeance review, Cataclysm review, and a review for every single other book in Phase 2. If you want to get involved in the High Republic discussion, Star Wars Lads is definitely your place to be. We will continue our coverage for Phase 3 as well. All right, let's jump into the junior novel. So we'll start with Quest for the Hidden City, which came out first. This is written by George Mann. It was about 300 pages or so, and it stars a Jedi Padawan named Rupert Natani. Rupert is joined by her master, Salandra Sho, who's a very cool character with a shield, and she's pretty awesome, has some cool moments here. They go to a planet where they meet these bat-like creatures called the Catacoots, and you have to decide and figure out whether they're friend or foe and what's going on this mysterious planet. So I'm going to pass it over to Sanak here for his review of it and score out of 5, and then we'll come back over to me and we'll move on to Planet X after.
Yeah, I think reading Quest for the Hidden City was pretty refreshing. I thought George Mann was probably the only real author in this phase to understand that when you call something Quest of the Jedi, kind of hoping there's some pretty interesting adventuring, almost, like finding new places, new civilizations, understanding that in a strange way, the Star Wars galaxy is constantly developed and redeveloped, and people are disconnected. Some people choose not to be connected, and how the Jedi and the Republic stumble on them is what presents some great storytelling, and that's what's in here, right? This is also full of interesting Pathfinder stuff. Not too much about like what their role is, just like characters that happen to be Pathfinders that I thought were pretty nice. Like, oh, I think one of them was Obrick or something, and he was a fun character to follow through, and seeing how the Jedi eventually split from them. And a lot of the very interesting mystery is in this two-planet system, the darker, ravaged planet of Gloam, and the pretty sophisticated, society of the people on Abudas, about I don't know, it's Abudas. I'm just gonna call it that. But it's very interesting that we have another like synergy almost planet like Irem and Arano, and versus where those people are very two different civilizations, environments, and they're constantly fighting. This is a story about how these bat-like creatures just kind of devastated Gloam, just use it for mining materials to really help create their civilization, its sophistication. And now they're realizing, oh, we're kind of running out of fuel and energy and supplies. Like, what are we going to do? Got to contact the High Republic, make contact with them. Hopefully, they'll help us out. And for the most part, they're a pretty complicated race. I think a lot of them are trying to do the right thing, but some of them definitely aren't. Some of them, are still kind of ravaged by the past that they forged on Gloam. Like Rillick was one that I was like, oh, he's a interesting character. I thought he was very helpful, but then you realize, in a way, he is the reason for a lot of the danger and tragedy that happens with Roke and his group of Pathfinders and his Padawan before Salandra and our character Rupert Natani come. And Rupert and Salandra are pretty cool duo. I think Rupert is. I wish there's a little bit more from her. I think she does really try her hardest. She's very passionate and she's very thoughtful about everything she does. Like you said before, Liam, in a different video, we definitely see a little bit more of her interesting perspective of the Force. She sees that colors bleed from people, which I think if we got to see in the comics would have been extremely cool. So obviously it didn't happen there. And this is the medium where this character is kind of kept in. And Salandra is pretty cool here. They have a very interesting dynamic. I think, she's always trying to teach Rupert what it means to really be a Jedi, to accept, pushing forward what it means, the causes, the goals, the values of the Jedi, instead of just looking at it as like, oh, you're practicing forms, you're doing this and that. Like realizing, yeah, in some ways we have to be the shield for so many people here. We have to be the guidance for a lot of people here. And a lot of that comes from our compassion and our understanding of who we are as well. And I thought that was a pretty interesting arc for her. We get to see characters like Das. I think Das is pretty fun, him and his dad, and their escapades after being messed up by Sunshine Dobbs and left there. They have their own interesting journey, kind of running up through Gloam, through this hidden city where we hear these Catacoots also have ancient ancestors who, you know, have been transformed by these minerals that are affecting them and kind of killing them off, but at some point maybe created these more dangerous monster-like versions of them that are told in their stories. And it's pretty interesting to see Das and his climb quite literally up into the city. We get to see Rupert and her journey, and then we get to see some of the Pathfinders and they're split up before it all kind of is nicely tied up into a bow here. I don't think it's an anything incredible story. I think it's just very fun. So for me, I'd give it a 3.5. I do like where it leads our characters, and it's definitely was a solid start for a lot of the junior novel stories that we get from this phase.
I agree. I think this book is exciting. It's action packed. If you are looking for a book for your children or you're of the age of somebody who would be reading this for maybe school or something like that, I think you're going to have a good time with this. It's a snappy read, even though it is, I think, the longest junior novel in canon. It reads really fast and quick. It's exciting. There's a lot of adventure, and like you mentioned, this book really takes in the quest element. The quest subtitle of phase two is present here. It's on both of the junior novels, but it really more applies to the hidden city. And this is a more Indiana Jones style discovery story. It's about dark mines and hidden creatures and old technology, and there are a lot of really cool things. I think when you boil the plot down, like most junior novels, it ends up becoming a lot more simple than maybe your imagination would take you, or at least the imagination of two adults like us reading this. But where there are some ideas where I'm like, okay, maybe they could do this. This would be cool. And it ultimately becomes the lowest common denominator simple story, but that is the medium we're going for. And I can't hold that against it. Rupert is a good character. I like the color thing, and she learns a valuable lesson, but for me she doesn't stand out as much as like some of the characters in maybe phase one with the test of courage, but she does have enough layers to her that I think she stands out more than some of the other junior novels we've read. Solandra Show for me is one of the big highlights, and I do like that even though junior novels tend to tackle younger characters, here we do have a master apprentice dynamic that plays through the entire novel, and I think it works well because by the time we get to the end, Rupert has learned valuable lessons not just from her experiences in the book, but through working with her master. And there's an admiration and a respect level there that we get to see really grow, and it sets her up nicely to be on her own in the next book. So I thought there's a nice little arc there. All the characters are good. The rest of the Pathfinder team works well. And I do like the design and the way the catacoots are written. I think there's a unique piece of world building there that you don't see too often with creatures in junior novels, and George Mann tackles it pretty well. I think my only problem with this book really is that it the plot is pretty simple when you boil it down. There's not any twists and turns that you can't really see coming. So if you're looking for a junior novel that's really going to blow your mind and change the way you look at junior novels, if you're reading as an older perspective, I don't think this is it. But if you're looking for a nice, snappy, fast High Republic story, you're into phase two. I think you will like this book. I was also going to give this a 3.5. I think George Mann really handles the excitement and the adventure of this story quite well. Let's move on to The Quest for Planet X. This was written by Tessa Gratton, who also co wrote Path of Deceit, the first young adult novel in the High Republic Phase 2. This story follows Rupert as well, as she is on Batuu, training by herself, really, in the Jedi Temple on Batuu, studying and doing research, but she's kind of bored whilst Master Salandra is gone. Her friend Das from Quest for the Hidden City is going on an adventure in the, what is it, the hyperspace race or something like that, with Sky Graf, a character who is related to the Graf family from phase one and part of the whole Graf versus Santeca hyperspace charting kind of family war that's going on. And this is an interesting story that adds a couple layers to these characters, focuses more on the younger characters instead of the older. So, Nick, what were your thoughts on Quest for Planet X?
Yeah, I think in some ways by keeping the story very much around these young characters without an older influence, it did make the story feel a lot more childish. There's no real, I mean, just to put it out there, the quest for the Planet X doesn't come to fruition. That's the ultimate twist of the story, and it's got pretty good reasons, right? With our new character of Skygraph, they're obviously looking to get to there through the hyperspace chase, but they're also very interested in finding their father because their father's been missing it for a year, and that kind of drives a lot of the more sporadic, crazed, some inane decisions, honestly, from this crew. Rupert is bored, and a lot of her character arc is that, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be following my master, which I don't know, comes as a little bit disappointing because a lot of her and Solandra's dynamic is that she's very quick on her feet and she learns and she surprises her own master with her awareness and her compassion. Here, it's like, well, she's a little older than Das, and she finds Sky a little off-putting, but she's there to help her friends, so she has to do this and that, and that's kind of what it feels like. That she kind of has to do a lot of things in this book, and that was a little bit disconcerting for me. Das, he's pretty fun, but he doesn't really also get much development here. It's just after spending so much time, trying to emphasize in Hidden City that he wants to become a Pathfinder. I can see why he would make this chase for Planet X, especially having been there after being abandoned by Sunshine Dobbs along with his father. But I don't know. I don't think he did too much in this book either. It was just more of like, by the end, he's doubled down on that commitment because of what he's seen and gone through. So it's really Sky who's supposed to be the voice here that really should direct this book, but they're not that appealing. They got some pretty interesting stories about like acceptance within their family, understanding that the Graphs are all kind of individuals. The stuff with the buoy, I thought was pretty cool. Fixing the buoys around Dalna once they eventually stop their quest, and Sky just realizes that we have to defer to Rupert and the calling of her master and Roke, right, to Dalna, and that's pretty interesting that they played a role in getting communications working around the planet again. So it's not like isolated, and we don't hear these Jedi just keep getting massacred during Cataclysm and Path of Vengeance and other material. I don't know. I think it also ends a little too quickly, too neatly. Rupert, if there's an adventure that her master would be upset about, it would be this. But Solander's just, I guess, more than happy after, I guess, her events of Battle of Jeddah to just be calm about them. Like, I'm glad my Padawan is happy and everything's going great there. It does have some pretty nice connections to a Nameless Terror with Roke and his new Padawan, right? But I don't know if I really enjoyed this. I think for a little shorter of a book, it felt like it dragged out a lot more. So I think that, and not actually getting to Planet X and getting a little bit of the perspective, which would have made Rupert a much more interesting Jedi would have made, Das and Sky a lot more interesting characters. This is like a very light brief, just because, it's still fun. I just didn't get myself as invested as I was during Hidden City.
I agree with most of all those points too. This is a book that kind of goes for more of the lower denominator when it comes to junior novels. It's written more towards children and doesn't have some. Look, there's some things in Quest for the Hidden City that are a little bit more violent than you're expecting in junior novels, or a little bit more exciting. There's some higher level language. Sometimes there were words in there that was like, I can't believe this is in like a fifth grade reading level book. But in this one, it is more baseline, and it does touch on younger characters dealing with younger character type problems, like will my family respect me? Will my master be mad at me? Will my dad be mad at me? It's more of those type of problems, and we see those. It's not that those are poorly written in this novel. It's just we see those a lot throughout junior novel. This doesn't really add dimensions to the characters of Rupert or Das from the last book that make you think that they've evolved or changed much from that last book. I think there's an emphasis in Quest for the Hidden City about Rupert learning from Salandra about being a shield, using the shield, and becoming a person who protects and serves, what it really means to be a Jedi versus what the younger Padawan look might be, which is adventure, excitement, showing off. And there's a lot of emphasis on that same story beat here, but it felt like she had already kind of learned that in the last issue. So I think the things that were most interesting about this was the fact that there is a Path of the Open Hand member who joins the crew for almost the entire book named Fel Ix. And Fel Ix is an interesting character. And I think the best parts of Quest for the Planet X are when Rupert and Fel Ix sit down and talk about their idealistic differences. And I think when that happens, it is that's the only attempt that this book makes to really elevate its material, to start dissecting religion and beliefs and people's different cultures and why we can look at things from different perspectives. I think that's the highest level thing that's provided here. versus the rest of the book is more about, let's go here and try to find this object. Oh no, my brother's chasing me. We got to get away. We get to this planet. Oh no, I'm being chased again. It's a lot of like resetting and jumping back into problems, but ultimately never accomplishing your goal. I think there is a nice message about this, about you don't have to accomplish what you've set out for to grow and to learn. There is lessons in failure, but I've read that a little bit more in across junior novels, so I think it doesn't come off as strongly here as the excitement and a little bit higher narrative in Quest for the Hidden City. So even though this one is more connected to the High Republic Phase 2, and I think if you're trying to decide between the two and you want all of the perspectives and all of the connections, this does give you another side of events we do see in other mediums, so you might enjoy that more than when you read Quest for the Hidden City, which is pretty much completely disconnected from almost everything in the High Republic. But other than that, I would say this is a lesser novel. And if you had to pick one of the two, I would recommend Hidden City. I would give this one a 3 out of 5 also. So that's going to wrap up our review of the junior novels. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't checked out our comic reviews, check that out. Also, check out our review for Path of Vengeance, Cataclysm, Battle of Jeddah, Path of Deceit, and Convergence, all up there. And if you want to check out our thoughts on every single book in the High Republic, including Phase 1, we have a tier list out, an updated one ranking all of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Our last video detailing the High Republic Phase 2 will be coming out later this week. We do have a reading guide for all of you. It's going to feature Phase 2 more in depth and then a kind of a recap on our recommended reading order for Phase 1, which we've already covered more in depth in another video. So it will be a kind of a joint combination of the two. Keep an eye out for that video. Of course, there will be a lot more stuff coming from us across the month of July. We are going to be getting back to some of our old series, trying some new things, and really exploring a lot of different content here on the channel now that we've finally caught up on basically every piece of content that has come out over the last 5 months, from the High Republic, Jedi Survivor, and Mandalorian and Bad Batch. There's been so much Star Wars over the first 5 months of this year, and we're now finally caught up. We also have a review of Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade when that comes out as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll see you all next time.